Hi guys, it's Emily from Novell Novels and welcome to today's video. This is my January wrap up part 2, and like I've said in previous videos, this will be the last part 2 video. From now you'll be getting videos on a Wednesday. You might get a couple more videos on a Wednesday. I've got an announcement video that's coming out on a Wednesday coming up. But you'll get my stats video coming out on the Wednesday after, and I have decided that sometimes there may be an overlap between my reading catch-up and the end of the month. I know that's certainly happening in February, and I think it's happening in March. So what I will do in those occasions is that I will add those two books briefly into the stats videos, just so that you still get to see which books I'm finishing before the end of the month. So that in that case, that'll be when you'll be seeing the books I'm reading in that. Other than that, you'll just be getting these first bits and the favourites in the stat video, so it would be a nice short but sweet video. Like I said, I'm taking self-care, but I know there are some of you that love the stats. I know Chatty absolutely loves the bookish stats. I know some other booktubers that enjoy it, and some of the viewers that like it, and I do actually start enjoying doing the stats. So talking about stats, let's get the stats over and done with. Sweet is right next to me. She may well be appearing quite a bit in this video. She's decided she wants attention today. So, here we go. I read 33 books this month. Bear in mind, I'm filming on the 31st, so the last day of the month. And I actually finished reading those 33 books yesterday. How I did that, I've got no idea. I've had some shorter books, and I've had some days where I had to book an extra rest day yesterday. So that has had a part in it. And I've also read some shorter books, longer books this month. I read 29 books off my unread TBR, and that's basically from now till the end of the year, I'm going to be having 3 library books a month and 1 reread. So there will be 4 books coming off no matter what. Well, I think next month I might have 1 more, I'm not sure, because I think I'm doing an extra reread next month, I don't know. I only gained 20 books, so the book haul that's coming out is on Wednesday. Yes, I've got a book haul coming out on a Wednesday. Very random. So on Wednesday's video, you'll see my book haul. It's only 20 books, guys. I was good. I only bought 17, so that was very good. I did unhaul 2 books off my unread TBR. I did forget to say there was a DNF at the start of the month, and that was my Small Pleasures by Claire Chambers. It just wasn't for me, and I unhauled a middle grade book that Mia gave me, don't tell her. But yeah, it just wasn't for me, so that's another. So there's 2 unread books off my TBR. January's unread TBR went up obviously because it was Christmas, and it was 289. February's unread TBR, prepare for the dingling, prepare for the shouting, prepare for the excitement. 278, lower than ever. I got it down by 11 books. It went down by minus 11 books. So I am celebrating big flipping time. I want to get it down again in February because March is my birthday month. March is the month that I'm also going to London with Kat, and Chris and me are going to some of the charity shops in some of the towns near here for my birthday treat. So yeah, I may be going out to Woking with Charlie in February, and in that case that might be a little bit of a thingy, but I'm trying to keep my numbers going. I'm not trying not to gain too many books. Right. Genres wise, here we go. I have read 1 mystery, which I did enjoy. Oh no, that'll tell you in a minute actually. 2 classics, which one of them was the Agatha and one of them was Sons and Lovers. 3 non-fiction. I am enjoying non-fiction again, so that my number might be certainly going up. 6 fantasy, guys. I am loving my fantasy. 9 historical fiction. Turns out I've got less historical fiction on my shelves now, unread. And 12 contemporaries. Again, I'm really happy with those numbers. I'm happy with the genres. I read 3 3-stars, 1 3.5 star, 14 4-stars, 9 4.5 stars, but only 6 5-stars. So it wasn't as good a reading month in the fact that I only had 6 5-stars. But it could be that I had a bit of a slight slump after December being so amazing. But it's still 6. I'm not beating myself up at that. And some of the 4.5 stars were bought 4.5 borderline 5. So yeah, you can sort of call that overlapping. It's still been a really good reading month. Now, I don't want this video to be too long, and I think what I'm going to do is with the books, is not to go into too much detail about them. Certainly, I will talk a lot more about the 4.5 and 5 stars, but the 4 stars and the lower ones lower than that, I don't want to go into too much detail, purely because part of it is I don't want this video to be too long, and secondly, this is what I'm going to be doing in the reading catch-ups, is I'm not going to be focusing too much on the books that are just okay. I want to talk more about the books that I'm really enjoying. So, the 3 stars, first 3-star was Sons and Lovers by D.H. Lawrence. I'm actually going to unhaul that because it's not going to be a classic I'm going to want to reread, but I enjoyed it more than Lady Chatterley's Lover by the same author. I'm tempted to try The Rainbow by this author. I'm tempted to try more of the author's work because it was definitely better than, like, Lady Chatterley's Lover I hated, it was like 2 stars, and this was definitely better, but it was the Oedipal bond he had with his mother was slightly cringeworthy, very cringeworthy if you know what an Oedipal bond was, and the way he's chased Miriam and the provocative Clara. It was weird. It's my classic for the month. Not necessarily one I'm going to reread, but it has made me tempted to try the author's other work. But not going to be buying them for very much, and certainly I may try library, I don't know. That's unhaul. Oh, just realised there's a stain on it. Then to a book that I randomly picked off the shelf, I think I can't remember if I put this in the books I'm adding on to TBR, and this was Tangerine by Christine Mangan. I counted this as historical fiction on my shelves, but it actually turned out it was a mystery. Although it was set in the 1960s, I think, 50s or 60s, and it was very much a mystery, very much a weird book. I can't remember, I think Bernard's got it, and we were thinking about Buddy Reading, we never got around to it. It was a very weird book. That is the best way of describing this. It's not historical fiction, because it's definitely more of a mystery, but it was weird. About Alice Shipley, and the last person she expects to find is Lucy Mason. Just very, very weird book. Not for me necessarily. It was 3 stars because I read it in like a day, so I obviously blew through it. But just very, very weird. Charity shops can have that. The next one was a 3.5 star, and I'm giving it to the lovely Jem from Gemma Books because Jem will enjoy this more than I did. And it's Frederick Backman's book, Britt Marie Was Here. Pretty copy. I wanted to give it to Jem because Jem's lovely and I love Jem. Translated fiction, which is what I want to do more of. I'm going to try and read at least a translated fiction a month, or I think I've read 2 translated fiction books this month, so I've done better. I loved A Man Called Ove. I loved. This I did enjoy, and it's one I definitely think Jem will enjoy more than me. It wasn't amazing, but it's about Britt Marie, who is an older lady. At first sight, she's a fussy, passive-aggressive busybody. But hidden underneath is a woman who has bigger dreams and a warmer heart than anyone around her can imagine. This did definitely grow on me, and it got better the more I read. Definitely a good book, definitely a good translated fiction, and that is one for Jem. But I think Jem would enjoy the writing style more than me. So those are all good. Now the 4 stars books are good books. They're really good cosy reads. 3 stars were just okay for me. For 3.5 star, it could have been 3, it could have been 4. It was just very much in the deciding bit. So the first one of the 4 stars is my book is my series book, and it was Watermelon by Marian Keyes. I think what probably knocked it down slightly is the first of the Walsh Girls books, and I read a book way further on in the series ages ago, an audiobook. And this is about Claire Walsh, and this is definitely, I think for me, like, this was originally written quite a while ago, so it's the first book in the Walsh Girls series. I think it was written, like, first published in 1996, so it's actually one of her oldest books. So bear in mind that time setting. 1996 was the year before my car accident, so that's like nearly 30 years old, which is quite a scary thought. So obviously the time that it's set in, you have to bear that in mind. Definitely the first in the series, definitely one I'm going to keep, because it was really interesting to read about Claire Walsh, knowing how it is, like, the book that I listened to on audiobook very later on in the series has her daughter, Claire Walsh's daughter, as like a teenager, nearly adult. So that was quite weird, and it was quite weird seeing the characters I've read later on for the first time, and it's like really weird, but I really, really enjoyed it. It was a great 4-star book, definitely one I'm going to keep. Definitely, I can't wait. I'm going to read them every other month. So Angels will be read in March. Really enjoyed it. Then I did read a couple of foster care books this month, but they're not being put together. But I read this one, which is Casey Watson's foster care book, which is Runaway Girl. And this was interesting. 4 stars. It's not me judging it. It was purely and simply the fact that obviously it's non-fiction. Most of my non-fictions are going to be 4 stars. It would take a lot for a non-fiction to be 5 stars. And Casey Watson's books are great. I love, I've got Kathy Glass books, and I've got one of hers that I read as well. And they're both fantastic, awe-inspiring, these foster carers, what they do. And this one talks about Adriana, who's 14, when she was forced to leave everything she loved behind. And it's her story. Really good book. Charity shop though. Mum can't read foster care books. And then I read the last in the series. I think did I rate this 4 or did I rate it 4.5? Oh, I put this on the wrong pile. Oops, that's on the wrong pile. Didn't think that was only 4. I'll have to go back. Sorry. Like I said, actually that works out perfectly. So the next foster care book was Kathy Glass' book, Mummy Told Me Not to Tell. This is one of her earlier books, so again I had to bear that in mind when that was. And this was about, come on Reese, we're going home. I done well yesterday, didn't I, Kathy? But I done bad today. This was heartbreaking. It's Reese's story. So he got, there was bits in this that I could tell what some of the twists were, because obviously there are some twists in the foster care. You find out what's happened to Reese and some of the things like that. But he was being excluded for violent and aggressive behaviour. But that anger, but beneath the anger is a too kind little boy who's too scared to tell. I think obviously you can tell that he is behind in certain things because of obviously his upbringing, and you'll find out why in this. But some of the way the school that he goes to in this treat him, I found that very heartbreaking. I've got a child who's obviously slightly neurodivergent and has extra needs, and last year Thomas had a really hard time with his teachers that were behaving. And when you read about the teachers, the way they treated Reese, I found that very, very hard. And yeah, I found that hard. So that was for me a bit of a trigger. But it was a good book, foster care books. Yeah, that was one of the ones I got from the charity shop, so I'm taking it straight back. Then to a book that I actually rated less on a reread. It didn't count a reread on my chart because I read it on audio, but I think I listened to it originally on audiobook, so I had to get my own physical copy of it. And I actually thought it was I thought it was contemporary. It's actually historical fiction, and that is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Now, I read this ages ago. It was all over BookTube years ago, and it was raved about. Two twins that are identical twins, and they grew up in a small town southern black community until age 16. They run away. I think this is almost like an Ella Lawson classic book. And this is about how one sister lives with her black daughter in the same southern town that she goes back to the town that they escaped. And the other sister secretly passes as white, and her husband knows nothing of it. And it's their story. Everyone read this years ago. I think originally I rated it 5 stars, but on a reread it was just 4. It was good, but not one I'm going to keep. The charity shop bag getting big. The next one is a book that I got from the charity shop near me for like 25p or 20p, and it's The Last Charm by Ella Albright. It basically, it's a perfect and heartwarming love story for fans of Me Before You and One Day in December, and it has so many of those same traits. The difference is that Layla has this charm bracelet that tells a story of love, a story of loss, and a story of hope. But it does echo so much of those other 2 books. It alternates chapters, it goes over years. There's a twist at the end that you can predict it. That's so atypical. I won't tell you it because it's so atypical in a lot of those books. Loss, things like that. It is good. It is emotional. It does talk about grief. It does talk about you've got some other triggers for abuse and things like that in it. It's a good book. Not one that I don't even think Mum's going to want to reread. So I'm glad I read it. It was a charity shop book, but not necessarily one I'm going to reread. And then I think one of my last books that I read of the month. Actually, I've got 2 more books. This was one of the last books I read of the month, and this is The Secret Wife by Jill Paul. And this is partly set in the Roman times. You know, when the whole family, the Roman family, the Russian family got we all know what happened to the Roman family. They all got killed. But this is a twist. This has some twists because we don't actually know that they all got killed. And part of the storyline, half of the storyline is set in 1914 with Russia on the brink of collapse. And it talks about the Grand Duchess Tatiana, who falls in love with a cavalry officer, Dmitri. So Dmitri is the main character in this, and there's like offence and everything else. And then you've got the current day storyline set in 2016, and Kitty Fisher escapes to her great-grandfather's remote cabin in America, and she makes, after a devastating revelation, makes her flee London. But there on the stories of Lake Academy, she finds a spectacular jewel pendant that will lead her to an unburied secret. 2 storylines, very good book. I actually had this on my shelves for ages, but I picked it up because Berna from Berna's Vicky's Adventures is reading it. I don't know what she rated it yet, so I'm going to go over to her channel and see what she rated it. But it's been on my shelves ages, and the fact that Berna was reading it made me want to read it. 4 stars, really good book, historical fiction, And it's gone grey here again. Then to a book that I rated 4 stars. It's an Ali Hazelwood book, but it wasn't one of my favourites. I rated this 4 stars, and I've rated a lot of her other books. So I'm actually probably going to do what my sister does, and I'm thinking about selling it on Vinted. Don't know for details yet, but I don't think this is going to go to a charity shop, because I paid the full whack for it, but I don't necessarily want to keep it. So I'm thinking about selling it second hand. There we go. I have decided, because Charlie sold a lot of books on Vinted, and I'm thinking that I might do it. It does involve buying stuff, packaging up, so I won't be doing it straight away. But yeah, so that is why. It's just not one of my favourite books by this author. It is good, saucy romance, Ali Hazelwood. I do like her books, but she puts one out every year, and do I need to, I don't know. When it's Roycey, but there are triggers in this, and I think it says at the start about the triggers, and it says you have to be aware of that. So it's different from her, still sort of techie kind of romance. I've still got Bride to read, and I did like Check and Mate, but I much preferred The Love Hypothesis and Love on the Brain and Love Theoretically. Love Theoretically I blooming loved. So I didn't love this quite as much. It is good, saucy romance, has some triggers in it, very saucy stuff. But maybe it was just the wrong time for me to read it. But yeah, it's a good book. Not necessarily one I'm going to reread. So I think that's going over there. Now to the 4.5 star books. And they're all really good. And I'm already on 17 minutes, so I don't need to want to go on to them too much. I've got this one, which is the last in the Trials of Apollo series. I think this has been rated lower because I think I've been all Rick Riordaned out. I read the Heroes of Olympus series last year. I read a couple of other books last year, and I went straight from the Heroes of Olympus to this, and I've done in. I'm keeping this book though because it is the last in the series, and the lovely Lorraine bought it for me last year. I read it. Buddy read it with Cat and Brews and reviews. I enjoyed this way more than some of the other books, but this series is not quite as good as Heroes of Olympus series, which I will certainly be reading. So I'm keeping it because I will reread the series, but we're going to have a break between this and the next book that we've got by The Sun and the Star by Rick Riordan, Leo story. So we are going to have a bit of a Rick Riordan break because I think we've literally crashed and burned on it. It's the last in the series. You don't need to go into any more detail. It's a really good book, and it definitely tied up the series really well, considering the third book was a bit pants. But I'm not going to keep it. Now to ones that I'm going to lend to Mum. This is Heartcross Castle by Chrissy Barlow. It's part of the series. This series I'm not keeping because I can reread it. I can pick them up from the library quite easily. It's Lockhart Lanes, and this is one of the earlier books in the series, and it's about what happens up at Heartcross Castle. And you've got Grace, and this is about Grace, who's left her beautiful... She basically got left the castle by her grandfather, and she's as a single mum of 3. Grace has no idea what she's going to do. She basically, her life's falling apart and things have happened, and she inherits the castle, but there she meets the celebrity chef Andrew Glossop. I love this series. It's a good, fun series, Love Heart Lane. Once you go to Love Heart Lane, you never want to leave. I nearly picked up another book by the author from the library, but I waited, so that is a mummy saved book. The next book was one I picked up in the Works 3 for £6 offer, and this is the Aero Book Club, and this was well worth it. Hi, sweet. This was worth it. I'm almost tempted to keep it, and it nearly is 5 stars because it was so borderline. It is about what it was like in World War II, about a bookshop, about a lady, and about the book air raids that were happening, and she basically takes on a Jewish girl who is forced to evacuate Germany. And it is a brilliant, brilliant book. It's books about books. It is fantastic. It is brilliant. Thoroughly recommend it if if you like wartime books, if you like books about bookshops in war, this was just smashing. Pick it up. And to another one that Mum's going to borrow, and this is The Way Past Winter, which was the last book I finished in the month. It was 4.5, nearly 5 stars. It was so good, but I think I'm biased in that because, sorry guys, sweet bum. I love Kira Millward Hargreaves books. Middle grade, fantasy, set in the wintry cold depths. And Mila wakes to find her brother Oscar is gone, and it's adventure. And Sweet, got to get her face out of the camera. Sweet is very into the camera. You had a few videos about her, and now she's back. This was brilliant. Thoroughly good fantasy book. Kira Millward Hargreaves middle grade books are amazing. I picked this up recently, had to read it in winter. Thoroughly recommend it. Mum will like that too. Yes. Now it's a book that I won't lend Mum because she would break her into a million pieces. But I got this in Bognor last year on the holiday, and people told me to read it quickly, so I listened. It is set in Nazi-occupied Amsterdam, and it's about Professor Joseph Held, who has never recovered from the loss of his wife, and it's set in 1941, and it does talk about what was happening at the time. Sorry, sweet. And it is very emotional, very hard-hitting historical fiction, but very, very good. It's for fans of The Diary of Anne Frank, you'll have some things that resonate in that. You have some harsh things because, yeah, it is very, very heartbreaking. So it's not one that Mum's going to like, but it was very good. Now it's the last of the 4.5 stars. Sweet, come here. And that is, if you can see it, because Sweet there, The Hidden Years by Rachel Horay. This is one that Mum's going to like. I got it from the charity shops last year, and I wanted to read it straight away. I've got 2 of our older books on my bookshelf, but I wanted to read this. It was pink, and it was historical fiction, partly set in 1966 and partly set in 1939, but it was a very, very good book. And it's sort of set over 2 timelines, and the 1966 one is the more recent timeline, obviously, and talks about Belle Johnson, who basically runs away to Cornwall for reasons. They don't really never say the reasons very much. With her new boyfriend, she falls in love with it, but then she recognises something that was set there, and then she finds. Then the other storyline is set in 1939, and it is Imogen Lockhart. Lockhart is about the young nurse who arrived at their very house in 1939 at the outbreak of the war, and Bella discovers how their stories interlink, and it's very good. So just got a tail now. So the next 3 books are 5 stars. I will tell you, I'm not going to get you to guess which book was a favourite of that half. Oh, Sweet's now knocked down the pile. First one, obviously you were going to guess it was going to be 5 stars, and this is Homefront by Kristin Hannah. Kristin Hannah's books do not disappoint. Yes, The Women was my favourite book of the month. This is actually more of a contemporary that was in historical fiction pile, but it will go on my shelves with all her other books because I want to keep it. It does talk about war. Actually, this is a 5 star. I think I'm going to keep it, but I might not because it's got the war from certain bits that overlap with the Women. If you think this is actually set in the current timeline, but it's part of it's set in the wartime, and it's a woman that Jolene basically has to go to war, and it talks about that, and I'm really worried the cat's going to knock the thingy down. But yeah, 5 stars, Kristin Hannah, didn't disappoint, bloody loved it. I can't wait to reread The Nightingale again, because this was great, but it was very, very hard-hitting, and it destroyed me. So I think I'm going to keep it. Now, what was my fishing... I don't even think this counted as my reread. My actual reread was... But this was another one that I listened to on audiobook originally, but I reread it in physical form with the lovely Chatty from The Mad Chatter. I'm not going to keep this. This is 5 stars, but I'm not going to keep it because I've read it twice and I don't need to read it a 3rd time. But it was very good. It was, obviously, everyone knows about the Mercies. It's a Kira Millward Hargreaves. So I actually read two Kira Millward Hargreaves books, and they were both rated highly. But this was set in the winter of 1617, and it was set obviously about the witch trials, and that destroyed me into a million pieces. I am not reading this again. It destroyed me, but the writing was incredible. It deserves 5 stars. It was 5 stars last time, 5 stars this time. Very good book. I really recommend it, but it destroyed me. Oh my god. And to my last book, and I think I'm reasonably happy with the length of this video, and this is The Cat Who Saved Books by Suzuko. This was given to me by the lovely Angela from Reading Off My Shelf. I am keeping this one because it has the words cat and book, and it did not disappoint one flipping bit. It was my favourite book of the month, alongside the Tea Rose that I read in the first half. It is going on my favourites of the year because there is something about this. Fantasy, cat saving books, before the coffee gets cold, like different stories kind of thing, interlinking. But it's done so bloody well. I absolutely thoroughly loved it. Thoroughly recommend it. If you love books, if you love cats, if you love cats and books, if you like the before the coffee gets cold sort of interlinking stories thing, get this book. It is amazing. And because of obviously the visitor and the cat, if you got to the end of the video, leave a cat emoji. What was your favourite books of the month, guys? Let me know down below. Let me know what books you've been enjoying. If I made you want to pick up books. Hope you're all well. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, not subscribed yet, look at my ding-a-ling. I'll see you all soon. Bye-bye.